Today, we're going to talk about firing your glutes. We're going to go over some of the most popular glute exercises. Are you doing these properly and getting your glutes to fire, or are you just reinforcing bad movement patterns? Let's check it out. The most important factor for getting the glutes to fire is the position of the pelvis. So most people end up in this position. This arching of the low back or hyperextension of the lumbar spine takes the work out of the glute and puts it into the low back. This excessive anterior pelvic tilt is also compressing the disc of the lumbar spine and can lead to a sore low back. That people think because they're able to get their leg higher that somehow that is making the move more effective, and it isn't. So how do we fix this? First, we need to get into the correct position for the pelvis, which is learning the posterior pelvic tilt. When we tuck the pelvis under, that is going to help us engage the low abdominals. And then when we extend the leg, the glute will fire. The correct pelvic position is also going to inhibit me from lifting my leg up high. You can see there's a straight line from shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. Pelvic positioning from side to side is also really important. So you can see here that I'm opening my right hip. This is really common. So in order to get the glute to really fire, we need to have level hips. So drop that hip that's extending, and that's going to help get the glute to fire too. So here from the front, so you can see my weight shifting. This is really common. So I need to shift it back so my hip is over my knee, leveling out the hips and maintaining my posterior pelvic tilt. And another one too is if you extend your foot, you can see what's happening in my foot is happening in my hip, right? So when I drop my hip, my toes point to the floor. That's another really good indication to just take a look at what your foot's doing. If you're having a really tough time understanding that neutral pelvis and feeling the brace of the low core in the bird dog or any exercise where you're in a tabletop position, then this is a really good place to start. So while you are lying on your back, as you inhale, allow for the anterior pelvic tilt, right? So that's when the pelvis rocks forward. And as you exhale, tuck the pelvis under and press your low back firmly into the floor, feeling your abdominals engage. That sensation during the exhale, that is the sensation that you want when you are in your tabletop position. Again, doing any exercise really that requires you to be on hands and knees. Test your ability to maintain core engagement and neutral pelvis with this dead bug variation. As you exhale, the heel touches, and inhale to come back up, the whole time pressing the low back down, keeping the core engaged. The glute bridge is the gold standard for getting the glutes to fire, but again, without proper form, people can actually do glute bridges without firing their glutes. So before you do your glute bridge, you need to tuck your pelvis. Posterior pelvic tilt is what is going to get those glutes to fire. So really, really practice, and you should feel your glutes firing, right? So you kind of know if you're doing it right because you're going to feel the glutes fire. If you're not feeling your glutes, then there's something wrong with the pelvic alignment, most likely. So let's take what we've learned and apply it to this bird dog variation. Pelvic tilt, hips are level. I'm going to extend through the hips, squeezing the glutes and maintaining that posterior tilt. This is important because our pelvic positioning needs to be properly applied in every single exercise we do. So here's an example of a split squat being done without the neutral pelvic positioning, and watch the difference here. See, now look at the alignment here. At the bottom of the move, I've got the hip, knee, shoulder, all in basically one line. My knee is staying behind my toe, and I can clearly feel my glutes and my core engaging. So just one more time, the contrast between no pelvic tilt, no core engagement, and pelvic tilt and core engagement. The squat is one of the most popular quote unquote booty building exercises, right? But if I'm collapsing on my hips, my pelvis is out of alignment, I've got no core engagement, guess what? I cannot build my glutes, right? So we got to get the glutes firing by getting into the correct pelvic positioning in order to actually get glute building during a squat, right? So watch that difference. There it is, right? So now I got something going on in the trunk right? But if I'm in this position with that anterior pelvic tilt, I ain't got nothing going on back there, okay? I can feel it in my low back. I can feel it in my like hip flexors a lot, but I'm not feeling it in the back of my legs at all, okay? So, yep, there it is. And it just is going to take practice, guys, okay? So it doesn't have to be perfect immediately. Just practice this stuff and you will improve.